of the world, it is Wednesday, that means it's comic book day. However, there's really only one comic book that I want to talk about this week, which happens to be The House of X, written by Jonathan Hickman from Marvel Comics. A little background in case you're not aware of this, most of the X-Men had been taken away to a pocket universe created by Nate Gray. And in the main Marvel universe, there was somewhat of like a mutant cure being made, or a vaccine. Mutants had almost been completely eliminated from the Marvel universe. However, now the X-Men have returned back and reunited with the few remaining mutants that had been left behind. Charles Xavier, who had died again, had returned back, but in the body of Phantom X. At least I think that's how you pronounce his name properly. And he's been doing his own thing, but apparently he's also come up with a new future dream for mutant kind. That brings us into the House of X storyline, which this first issue really doesn't delve into the back history of anything so far, and it seems as though we've leapt forward a bit. It seems as though we're a bit further along in the timeline as opposed to what happened in the previous issue of Uncanny X-Men. But to my understanding, another comic book by the name of Powers of X, or Powers of 10, I think other people are calling it, which is supposed to delve into the background to explain where we got to in this point in the timeline. This issue starts up somewhat eerily where Professor Xavier is seeing these pod people come out of their pods. Although at first I thought this was the evil version of Mr. Fantastic that was from the Ultimate Universe, but it is in fact supposed to be Xavier. We pan over to several different points on Earth where there's buildings that have been overcome by certain types of greenery and growth of trees. We find out that these are all connected together by the mutant island Krakoa. Krakoa, I'm never been really quite sure how to pronounce that properly. We find out with a combination of technology and with the mutant island, Xavier has found several different drugs that will help humanity. Xavier will give this to humanity if humanity leaves Krakoa and all of its inhabitants and mutant kind alone. Krakoa is going to end up being like Genosha, where it'll be its own little nation of mutants, where the island itself can identify mutants when they can come through special portals that have been created at these certain points around the planet. It's quite an interesting take because this is much different from Xavier's previous dream of integration with humanity. So it sounds as though Xavier wants to separate mutant kind from humanity and do their own thing. They even created their own alphabet and own language. The issue itself doesn't have any real action taking place, with the exception of a small group of mutants, which happens to be Mystique, Sabretooth, and Toad, who are trying to infiltrate and take some technology and information. Sabretooth is captured by the Fantastic Four, and Cyclops intervenes on his behalf. So there are little subplots in the background that are probably going to come to the foreground at some point in the future, but we're seeing most of mutant kind working together with Xavier, including Magneto, who's working on his behalf. For instance, we already see a group of humans that are composed of S.H.I.E.L.D., Hammer, Strike, Alpha Flight, and I think a couple of other groups that are forming their own space station, and you just know that's not going to end well when they finally do confront the X-Men. One thing that I like about this comic is we get little sections in between the story that are explaining certain elements about what has been happening with Krakoa and other mutants. For instance, one of the pages includes all of the Omega mutants that have been identified in comics. I personally like this being spelled out specifically so that we know certain mutants are really Omega mutants, even though we probably knew in the past by certain mentionings here and there, but this is definitively putting it out there. It really does feel as though Xavier does have everything planned out, or does he? There are several X books that are going to be coming out in a couple months, and I'm sure this is going to be some sort of segue from this comic book series, but I do feel like this is a solid start to this whole saga. I mean, it really did drag me on board to find out what Xavier has planned and what's going to be happening with the X-Men. But I'm curious what you guys thought about this. Did you read this first issue? What did you think about it? Leave comments down below and let me know. With that, thank you guys for watching me in this video. Be sure to check out my Patreon site, check out my social media sites, my websites, and everything else out there. Peace, love, namaste, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.
I'm in love with a hero.
There's a director's cut for this book that has alternate covers to it, the script as well as the book itself without the word bubbles, and the black and white version of it as well.